Hello, and welcome to We Speak CVE, a free podcast from the CVE program. On this podcast, we'll talk with people from the cybersecurity community about what else, cybersecurity and vulnerability management, and the CVE catalog of vulnerabilities. If you didn't know, the CVE program's mission is to identify, define, and catalog publicly disclosed cybersecurity vulnerabilities.
Hello and welcome to the We Speak CVE podcast. My name is Shannon Sabens. I'm your host and a CVE board member. Today we have a special guest with us. I have with us Dave Morse, who is the Manager of Program Coordination from MITRE for CVE and CWE. Dave helps with onboarding groups that want to become a CNA, helps them to become CNAs. So if you're interested in becoming a CVE Numbering Authority, this podcast is for you. I hope that we're going to debunk some of your fears or concerns or myths about becoming a CNA. We think it's pretty easy. Welcome, Dave. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Joy to talk to you again.
So tell us a little bit, if you would, please. I think becoming a CNA is pretty straightforward, but it's been a while since I myself have gone through the process with an organization. And I know sometimes, having helped others through the process, sometimes the fears are of what the process might be or the complexity of the process is greater than the process itself. Tell the people a little bit, if you would, about the actual objective requirements of becoming a CNA, and then we can talk a little bit about what that looks like.
Sure. So for an organization, big or small, that has already decided, we should be a partner for the CVE program. We should be a CNA. The onboarding takes from a month to a couple to 3 months. And that just allows for coordination of things like press releases, which are optional. And it ensures time for your team to get the sort of warm up training. We call it homework, but it's basically warm up technical training to make sure you have a solid foundation in generating the JSON files, filling in those CVE record document files before publishing to the web. We want to give you a good grounding in our systems and tools. So average a month or two for onboarding, but it's dependent on the organization.
From my own experience, one of the things that was challenging for organizations would be documentation of their of their vulnerability disclosures.
Yeah,
With regard to the whole, JSON format process, I guess I imagine in some sense that's easier for people. There's a template, but how long does it really take people to get up and, going there in terms of their readiness to make disclosure? I guess what I'm imagining is there are two sides to it. One side that's easier, the template, the format, everything's there and provided, and you can plug into it, maybe to the extent, of your capabilities. But you mentioned JSON. So, kind of what's changed with the JSON changes?
Sure. And I think I heard two very important big questions here. What is the CVE program's requirement or expectation for coordinated vulnerability disclosure, right? What does an organization have to have for a disclosure policy and for coordinating with people who report vulnerabilities to them? And then the other question is, what's that technical CVE record file format? We use JSON for it. And those are both great, and I'll take them separately. So first on disclosure, if that's okay, every organization is expected to have a coordinated vulnerability disclosure plan. It could be simple, it could be extensive. It's completely up to you. We hope that you'll follow industry best practice. And you might look to organizations like first.org. that kind of lead the industry in suggesting how that stuff should be done. We just require the CVE program just requires that you have a disclosure policy, public facing, that the world can see, a way to contact you, and basic description of your timelines and so on. We can discuss that with you, but we won't tell you what to do. Now, for the record format, that's just how do you interface with our system and publish a CVE record? And on our CVE program GitHub, we've got the CVE record format as a JSON schema. And we've got some documentation for, what are all these fields? Do I have to use all of them? Can I just use a few? We're also doing a very interesting effort where you as a new CNA, you publish a CVE record. In the JSON, you can add some very valuable additional data like CVSS scores. If you've heard of those, you might think, oh, wait, I thought that once I publish my record, later on, other people add the scores. That's an option. But CNAs can publish their CVE record with their own CVSS score or add their own CWE identifier to help the world understand the vulnerability from their perspective. So hopefully that helps. What do you think?
Definitely, that's great. And I love that the CNA, should they choose to really take advantage of the JSON format, can, as you said, add CWE, add CVSS. I'm a big CVSS fan myself. So, then you have a lot more, I don't want to say control over, but you have a lot more that you can say about, vulnerabilities affecting your product, that
Yeah,
you can share, and um, within the allowed format. So I love this, but then all the fields are not required, Dave. That's right.
right. That's right. The basic record has just a few basic criteria. We encourage, as soon as vulnerabilities are important to share, you go ahead and publish your record with all the data you have. But if you have more data later, you can add it. If you need to update your CVSS scores, go for it. Update your records later. And
Right.
not all of the fields are required.
Really nice. Really nice. Um, for, again, kind of going back to when I was helping organizations to become a CNA, one of the challenges that I observed teams to have is deciding on scope, and what's the right scope for their organization. Do you
Yeah.
want to speak to a little bit how you help folks find the right scope for them?
So you're absolutely right. Scope is a very powerful concept in the CVE program. For those who want to join the program as a CNA partner, if you're the code owner or maintainer, you're a project or a vendor, you gain what we call exclusive scope. You get to assign, publish the CVEs, the CVE records for your products with your content and your scores and so on. And others are not allowed to do that unless there's an extenuating circumstance and it gets escalated through a dispute process. But basically, by joining the program as a vendor or project, a code owner, you have scope. You own the messaging about your product. And that's very powerful. The scope should be your products, your projects, the code that you maintain. And you should describe in your scope clearly for the public, these are my products, these are my big brands, my sub brands, and maybe a link that says this is where you can find more information. Why? Because when the public comes to CVE.org, the website, and looks up your partner page, they want to identify what is in your scope or out of your scope. They want to know if they should report to you as the CNA, the product or project owner. And so you should clarify in your scope, what do you own? And you could put in your scope, don't bother me with end of life stuff, right? You could put my scope excludes end of life or not supported products. So there's power in having that scope, and you can be specific in it. You can also add descriptions about your scope, what's in and out, in your disclosure policy. So that's a powerful tool also.
That's absolutely great, Dave. I sometimes in my observations from the past, I've noticed sometimes folks had perceptions of obstacles to becoming a CNA that weren't necessarily real, and I want to help set those aside for people, both to remove obstacles and to remove any fear of the process. One of the things that I remember was a group, apparently a very test-averse group, imagined, that there would be kind of a test that they would have to pass. Or, tell me a little bit about some of the perceived obstacles that you've observed and how you helped people overcome perceived obstacles.
Sure. When you come for an onboarding, now we completely understand that what grew out of a sort of maybe North American or Western centric program is now a global program, and we recognize and we're trying to adjust to and adapt for the different languages in different regions. We want to be all encompassing and accepting and open. At the moment, one of the problems that we're having, or hurdles, is helping those who are not native English speakers to join the program. So we're working through ways to fix that. Haven't completely fixed it yet. Our onboarding sessions are in English, except for a couple of great programs, like we have a route that does onboardings for Spanish speaking regions. That organization in CBE out of Spain, super helpful in getting uh, organizations, projects, etc., that would prefer to join a Spanish-speaking hierarchy onboarded. We also have JP Cert in Japan that helps with Japanese and even Asian speaking countries in that region, and that's great. So one of the hurdles is getting over the current limitation on language for getting into the program. The technical hurdles are really less than you would think. When I described, you got to do some homework and show us that you know how to do JSON files, it's really basic. And we give you the tools. For example, there are 3 different client tools, software tools that have been released by members of our open source community for anybody to use. 2 of them are GUI tools, one's a command line tool, and they help you use our services and produce JSON records. And one of them that we use in our onboarding actually makes your JSON files for you. It's terrific. You go to the GUI, you enter in a few fields worth of information about a vulnerability, click a button, and there's the JSON file for you. And then you use that to show us you understand how to make a JSON, what's important in a JSON file. So really, it's a low technical bar to getting into the program. Now, of course, we rely on, the organization's internal technical teams to be careful about how they publish their vulnerabilities and so on. But we're happy to talk you through all of the other aspects as you're onboarding. I rambled a little bit there. What do you think?
No, I think those are great examples. And I was thinking as you started talking about language, gosh, we have in CBE in Spain, and they're wonderful, and JP Cert is wonderful, and we can find, probably some other resources to help if we had to, but those are
Sure.
great examples. And with regard to JSON tooling as well, I think we have tools for support, and means to support people. But I want to come back to, in CBE and JP Cert and the hierarchy that you mentioned. Say I'm a entity in Spain and I want to become a CNA, and I want to operate within that Spanish hierarchy and have support within that particular hierarchy. or maybe, you know, I have a particular need where, you know, I might want to be in a critical infrastructure hierarchy. Talk to me
Sure.
a little bit about how we may help folks choose a route and choose the right hierarchy for their organization and what's available there.
You bet. And that idea of roots is affiliation groups, whether it's by language or region or market sector or technical, area. Uh, some people are some people would like to be together with other CNAs in their market sector so that they can share experiences with them. For example, in the industrial controls and medical devices arena, we have a group of CNAs that are clustered under the CISA ICS route. And that happens to be housed in the U.S. government DHS, but it's also very much a bunch of global partners, CNAs, that are in that market space, in that market sector, and they work together to share information. You don't have to. It's just great to know that these other CNAs are experiencing things that might give you insight on how to do things better. We also have a route that has a focus on open source. The Red Hat company provides a route that focuses on open source. You are not required, if you're an open source project, you are not required to join under the Red Hat route, but it's definitely an option. And that affiliation with other partners, other CNAs in your market sector can be helpful and comforting and a great opportunity to network. So we love the fact that we're growing these routes in different regions and market sectors to provide that networking opportunity for folks in those interest areas.
Very good. Really appreciate that. How, you know, aside from the route, I know we have some support for CNAs ongoing. Should we talk a little bit about, I mean, you've hit on that here and there, um, but what gives people you know, groups support ongoing for their CNA needs? I'm a CNA, I have a question, you know, I could come ask my root, or I could come to the secretariat. Um, but
Sure.
we're a young CNA, we're still learning, and you know, maybe we have a lot of questions. What's our best recourse, or what are our different options for recourse should we have questions and our team needs support?
You bet. We talked about routes. The real function of a route is twofold. One, it's to recruit and onboard new partners, new CNAs as we grow globally. And also, once you've brought them in and trained them, now you've got to govern them and help them. And so let's imagine that you onboarded as an open source project under the Red Hat route. That's great. It's totally up to you. Uh, you would then go to them with your questions as you're living your life as an open source project and you have vulnerabilities reported to you or you find them in your own code and you're not sure how to publish that CVE for that thing, or you have a concern, somebody's reporting something to you, you don't think it's a vulnerability but the reporter says it is. You should be able to turn to your next level, your root that brought you in, and ask those questions. And that's the job of the root. Now, you can also always come to the program at the secretariat level or that intermediate level, your top level root. MITRE, for example, provides a top level root function when you when you need to ask things beyond your root. So you can reach out to them. These available channels for help are there. We also really encourage you to turn to the other CNAs in the community, and there's a Slack channel for that. Once you are actually officially announced into the program as a partner, as a CNA, for example, we'll give you the Slack channel access. There you'll find other CNAs who've experienced exactly what you've run into, probably 10 times, and they can help you with those questions, especially if it's at midnight and I'm asleep in your time zone. It's great to have that other place to go for answers.
Well, you nailed it. I love the peer support option. I think, a route that is, also in your sector or, similar business, they're the people who've had, experiences just like yours. And everybody remembers, I think, the first time, that they became a CNA and what questions they had. I do feel like folks really step up to help one another. So I'm
You
glad
bet.
you brought that up. Is there anything else? You've satisfied all my questions, but is there anything else that you would really want to tell a
Yeah.
group considering becoming a CNA for the first time? Go ahead.
You bet. You bet. Yes, of course, joining the program is free, but there's a little level of effort that your team would need to commit. And it's roughly equivalent to what you're already doing right now. If you're receiving reports of vulnerabilities, maybe from the public or researchers, and you're doing that coordinated vulnerability disclosure already, layering CVE on top of that is not that much extra work, right? It's just another task for that same team that's already doing your work in house. So it fits well in your already ongoing vulnerability disclosure program. Now, back to what are your channels for support? There's another way to get support, and that's through the working groups. The CVE program is a global community, right? There's no cost to join the program, and once you join, you're part of a community, and we hope you'll participate in working groups. And one of those working groups, especially, is focused on supporting CNAs, helping them answering their questions, working together, and networking. And so when you join our program, you'll have opportunities to not only get help through working groups, but give back to the community by participating in technical working groups where you can help us shape the future of CVE and make it better. Or you can plan conferences with us in those working groups. So I love to have prospects join our program and become partners, but I even more like when they participate and help us better the program for the future.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about talking about the working groups, but it's true. There is a lot of support in the CNA in the CNAWG.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Well, this was really great, Dave. I really want to thank you very, very much for coming on the podcast. And, you know, requirements change from time to time. The concerns change from time to time, particularly as we globalize the program. And I knew I might not be on top of the latest concerns. So it was really interesting to have you here. And I really want to thank you. And people, if you're thinking about becoming a CNA, if your organization is thinking about becoming a CNA, you don't have to come 100% ready. If you think you have to be 100% ready to engage in conversation about becoming a CNA, you don't have to come 100% ready. Dave and his team and the Roots are here to answer your questions and help you determine your readiness and even potentially help you overcome obstacles to your readiness. So don't feel like you've got to be 100% ready to engage in the conversation about becoming a CNA. So
We're always happy to answer questions. And Shannon, thanks so much. Always a pleasure to join you.
thank you so much. Have a great day. Thanks.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us today on the We Speak CVE podcast, which is available for free on Buzzsprout and the CVE website. If you'd like to participate or suggest a topic, please contact us on the CVE website.